Bubonic plague, as you probably know, is spread by the rat flea, which is why we watch all ships and ports. Pneumonic, on the contrary, can be spread like a common cold on the breath, sneezes, or sputum of its victims.
Very interesting, but I don't quite see why we were called into this.
Because this morning, right here in the city, your police found the body of a man who was infected with this disease.
Well, Dan, what about it?
So 1950s Panic in the Streets was directed by Elia Kazan just before he went on a mega run that included A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront with Brando, and East of Eden with James Dean. Now here he directs Richard Widmark, who was already a few noirs in, and gives a feature film debut to Jack Palance, the crook who knocks off a fellow gambler and not only gets away with his cash, but also becomes infected with the pneumonic plague. Cue a race against time manhunt as Widmark's military doctor has to track down the sick criminal before he infects others, all the while trying to keep the situation on a need-to-know basis as to avoid any panic in the streets. Let's take a look. So Panic in the Streets is often labelled a film noir. It's black and white and it's a 50s film with crooks. So it is by default really, but it's actually more of a straight thriller that throws in the viral curveball of having its villain carrying an infectious disease. Jack Palance is Blackie, the thug who offs a sick man and gets more than he bargained for. When the body is found dumped at the docks, the coroner discovers the dead man was carrying the pneumonic plague. In an attempt to stop the plague spreading and avoid public hysteria, Lieutenant Commander Clint Reed, Richard Widmark, gets called in and he teams up with Police Captain Tom Warren, the pair having only 48 hours to identify the dead man and who he'd been in contact with.
I'm ready for your statement on this story now, Doctor.
What story is that, Ned?
Oh, cut it out. You think I've been walking around with my head in a bag? You and the Public Health Service turning this town upside down? A murdered hoodlum, a ship in quarantine, and now a woman dead? An idiot could figure it out.
You qualify. What do you figure?
So Palance, meanwhile, hears the authorities are very interested in the case, and particularly something valuable that the victim had been carrying into the country, said pneumonic plague.
This guy Kochek is just a floater. He comes in off a boat, gets very unsocial. Even pulls a knife that he's going to use on Poldy. So they turn the town upside down for one crumb. They got every cop in town huffing and puffing trying to find out who he is. Why are they doing it?
Guys, I'm Stephen at Real Classic Film Reviews. Thanks so much for checking out this video. It would mean a lot to me if you could do that YouTuber thing and click the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps get these videos out there. And with that being said, so if there's something a little bit different about a virus chase movie from 70 years ago compared to now, it's that there never really seems to be a real sense of panic here. The government seemingly only half interested in the fact that the epidemic could erupt across the city.
But after all, we don't know the identity of the dead man.
And you haven't got much time, Mr. Quinn.
Also, we haven't got the body.
Did you empty out his pockets?
I had everything burned.
Great.
If the killer is incubating pneumonic plague, he can start spreading it within 48 hours.
48 hours?
Yes, we have 48 hours. Shortly after that, you'll have the makings of an epidemic.
Now, one of the things that works in the film's favour is it's a tight 90 minutes. In fact, it probably could be leaner still, but we get some scenes with Widmark and his family, supposedly to break the tension of the manhunt and maybe humanise his character a little, showing us what's at stake in the real world. But it does feature a role for the future Dallas star Barbara Bel Gedes as his wife, who does some great work with what limited time she has.
So stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
And don't get smart with me. If there's a plague here, you're the most important guy in town. And not only to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Panic in the Streets is set in New Orleans and is memorable for being wholly shot on location there. Something that was relatively new in Hollywood at the time. Many films were still being shot in studios. This is one of the elements that makes the film stand out. It's excellent location work. Apparently this was something that took the film's budget so high it struggled to make a profit. And Kazan shoots in backstreet bars and factories and crowded shipyards, showing a less picture postcard side of New Orleans. More industrial than the usual jazzy party town that we're used to seeing, although it does still have a great Alfred Newman jazz-infused score. Further to that point, I love the fact that as the hunt is on, we get a look at the Eastern European immigrant community of New Orleans, as Reed and Warren find out that the locals like to keep to themselves and don't like cops snooping around. Now, the real gem in this film is, of course, newcomer Jack Palance. I think credited here as Walter Jack Palance. He'd, of course, carve out an outrageous career playing these kinds of roles.
I got the connections, Paulie. I can move that stuff. We'll split it, me and you.
I want a priest, please.
What did you do with it, Paulie?
Please, I want a priest. Coach had 3 aces.
He's getting delirious.
He's getting delirious.
He's hysterical.
He's hysterical. Where's the stuff, Paulie? Where's the stuff?
He has such a unique look, Palance, that I'm sure he could play menacing in his sleep. Here, unfortunately, it's so early in his career that his name doesn't actually make it onto the poster. He's undoubtedly what you'll remember from the movie, though. And he looks almost skeletal here. Someone you wouldn't want to mess with on a dark night, and it's a bit of a shame that he and Widmark don't share a great deal of screen time. Now, Richard Widmark, who starred in some of my favourite films of the 50s and 60s, here plays one of his first kind of good guy roles. Here he suitably intenses his frustration at finding the plague-infected Palance grows.
This problem lies right here in our own community.
Community? What community? Do you think you're living in the Middle Ages?
Oh, come now.
Anybody that leaves here can be in any city in the country within 10 hours. I could leave here today and I could be in Africa tomorrow. And whatever disease I had would go right with me.
I know that.
Then think of it when you're talking about communities. We're all in a community, the same one.
I think the film is trying to say that although he's apparently low paid, a normal family man, he does in fact become one of the most important men in the city when it comes to averting a biological disaster. But what I also think it's doing is making a link between illegal immigration and highly contagious diseases.
Blackie, he had plague. Look how he looked. You touched him, I touched him too. Maybe he's right. Maybe we got the plague.
The 50s, of course, were a right time for ripped from the headlines storytelling, and of course, critics closer to the time, and more recently really, have looked into the film as a right-wing allegory for communism. And that image of a plague-filled Palance basically acting like a rat during the final showdown is about as on the nose as it gets.
He ain't going no place.
The pace here is mostly brisk and culminates in a great chase through a coffee warehouse that continues under the docks and finally has Palance climbing a rope to the ship, something Palance apparently performed himself. Now, like I said, the title is a tad misleading as there's very little on-screen panic on show here, but it does have a modern message in light of our current pandemic-saturated news feeds, and the handling of a potential out-of-control plague is treated hilariously. So director Elia Kazan directed less than 20 feature films, but when this is considered one of his lesser works, I think that just speaks to the level at which he could operate at. I mentioned his masterworks at the beginning of the video, but what about films like Boomerang, Wild River, A Face in the Crowd? And if you've ever wondered what a film noir, crime thriller and viral outbreak movie might be, you have it right here in Panic in the Streets. Go check it out.
Regardless of your opinion, I've got to do what I think is best.
Did you do what you thought was best for that woman who just died? If the doctor had known what was going on, couldn't he have saved her? Couldn't he?
I don't know.
You don't know.